Good afternoon, Patriots. This is the American Vision, brought to you on the TLBTV network and brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project. I'm your host, Bill Muckler, and I'm coming to you from my home studio in Cocoa, Florida. And today I'm really excited to have a guest who I've been following for years. I love his writings, and we all want to get to know him a little bit better, and that's Ken Crow with the Crow's Nest. So Ken, welcome to the American Vision.
Good day, Bill. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, and you're coming to us from Winterset, Iowa, which before the show reminded me that's the home of John Wayne, who's one of our all-time heroes.
Absolutely. He he was born and lived his first 4 or 5 years about 4 blocks from my house.
Wow.
It's a little white house, very nondescript. They say he was 14 pounds, so I've got sympathies for his poor mother. And, anyway, yes, he was born here.
Yeah, and he was a big guy in stature and every other way.
He absolutely is a great patriot. He did a thing once called My America or something that you may remember it, and he narrated it, and it's just a fantastic piece about how great America is.
Mm-hmm. Ken, let's let our viewers get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how you got started.
Sure.
That type of thing.
Well, I was born in Bryan, Texas, home to the Texas Aggies, and I was raised in Valley Mills in Waco area. As a matter of fact, the ranch that I was raised on was just right down the road from President Bush's place at Crawford, and I was a fighting Valley Mills Eagle for a while. Went in the military, served my time in the Navy, was very proud to do so. Did a couple of tours, did a Westpac, and I was part of the Iranian hostage crisis when they took the hostages. We were sent into the Persian Gulf by President Carter. That was an experience. Then we got out of the Navy and went back to doing our first love. Since I was raised on a ranch, I roped steers and rode bulls for a while and rodeoed. I was a rodeo cowboy. I got into politics in 1980. My family had always been active in politics, and I got in as a volunteer for the Ronald Reagan campaign in 1980, and I've been sort of off and on ever since. And then when the Tea Party cranked up, we started Tea Party of America back in about 9-10 years ago now, when Obama was elected. And I've been involved ever since as a consultant in helping candidates get elected, and did a lot of traveling around the country. I've spoken at quite a few state capitals, including the U.S. Capitol. I was really lucky one day I got to do that a few years ago, speak at our nation's capital. And been involved writing and political punditry and ever since, and wrote the book Ego and a Teabag, giving the behind the scenes of the Tea Party movement and its successes and failures and why. And that's pretty much what I've been doing, Bill. Still writing.
That's fascinating, and I want to thank you for your service as a Navy vet. And us Marines, we love the Navy because you guys took us on all expense-paid cruises to exotic places. And we got all free food and drinks and
fed you well too.
We love it.
Sure, absolutely. Well,
and plus I'm going to give a plug to our corpsmen too, because they're our guys. We love them too. So. Anyway, I remember you got involved in the Tea Party movement. When was that? About 2009, 2010?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And tell us a little bit about what you did in the Tea Party and what the Tea Party movement is all about today.
Well, what I did, I got involved. I met a gentleman in Des Moines, Iowa, right after I moved here. I mean, it was right after we moved here. I get this phone call one day and said, Ken, do you want to help us out on the Herman Cain campaign? Well, I love Mr. Cain. I thought this was great. So I went down to Des Moines and met this fellow, and it turned out his name was Charlie Gruschow. And Charlie was one of the ones right after Obama was elected. If you'll recall, they started having the big protest, right, that winter. A tax day protest, and everybody was organizing for April the 15th. And matter of fact, that day they had Hartford, Connecticut, Orlando, Florida, and this really long list of some of these rallies had 10, 15,000 people there because they were so, they were so upset over some of Obama's policies and the new taxes that everybody knew was coming, right? And Charlie got me involved with that. And he actually started the Des Moines Tea Party, which their first big rally was held that April 15th of, I want to say it was 09, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And along with Hartford, Connecticut, and all the other big famous ones. And then we kept plugging along. And a couple of years later, about a year and a half later, we started organizing, Charlie and I did, a major rally in Indianola, Iowa. At these Indianola every year has a big balloon festival. Well, they got this beautiful facility that's terraced and everything. It's perfect for a rally. And Sarah Palin was our keynote speaker, and the world held their breath because everybody thought Governor Palin was going to announce that she was going to run for president. So the Palin people pushed this rally quite a bit, and it ended up being on television and ended up being a large rally. And all those photographs that you see of her, she's wearing a white top with a gold pendant. In the background, you see this eagle, and it says Tea Party of America and everything. Well, that was that rally where she spoke at Indianola, Iowa. It was September of 2011, I believe it was. And ended up being a very successful rally. Had a thunderstorm in the middle of it, which shut it down for a little while. But overall, it was a great event, and we're very proud of that event. And Charlie did a fantastic job, and that's how we got involved in the Tea Party. Then I worked with Tim Saletti out of Texas, and we formed the TeaPartyCommunity.com. Which was sort of a spinoff of Facebook. It was sort of the Tea Party version for patriots, if you will, to where you're not subjected to the trials and tribulations of Facebook that we all know go on. And that ended up being a success. And then Tim and I worked on the Citizens for Trump.com, which we ended up with hundreds of thousands of volunteers that were out working for President Trump. Well, now President Trump, then candidate Trump, to get him elected. So we've been active the whole time. The Tea Party, Bill, one of the problems with the Tea Party, and a lot of people get mad at me for saying this, but you have too many kingdoms with too many kings is the bottom line. Everybody wants to be a chief. Nobody wants to be an Indian. Then nobody wants to give up their little kingdom, okay, because that's where they're getting their donations from. One of the biggest in the nation is run by a lady out of Georgia. This lady has earned millions of dollars running this Tea Party. And people have finally caught on to what's going on. The only way for the Tea Party to be successful is they're going to have to coalesce into one unit. And then they're going to have to send lobbyists to Capitol Hill like everybody else. And that's the only way to get the Tea Party agenda pushed through. The Tea Party was putting up all of these different candidates. Very few had any political acumen whatsoever. I mean, we had candidates out there saying, I swear I'm not a witch. I swear women that are raped don't get pregnant. I mean, and they're making all these huge mistakes that you just can't make in politics. And it's because they were running on ideology. And while ideology is fine and it's good, you have to have some political acumen involved, and you have to be able to raise the big money to become successful and get elected. I'll give you an example. In Iowa, the 3rd district of Iowa, now nationally, the 3rd district of Iowa isn't that big a deal, but it's going to cost $3.5 million to win that seat. If you want to win a Senate seat in Iowa, you're talking about $7, $8, maybe even $10 million. You want to go to California and do the same thing, you're talking about $50 to $100 million to run for the U.S. Senate. You can't just wake up one morning and say, oh, I think I'm going to be a senator today and run for the Senate. I mean, you got to have an organization behind you. You have to have big money behind you. And the problem with the Tea Party is that they run on ideological items which won't let the big money in that you need to win. I'm pro-life, but if I run my campaign on a pro-life platform, I'm going to get killed. And not only that, I'm not going to raise any money. I'm pro-gun. Well, the most you can do in a campaign to be successful is say, I support the Second Amendment, I believe in the Second Amendment, and I'm not going to let anything happen on my watch the Second Amendment. Then let it go. Don't get drug into all the ancillary conversations about bump stocks, AR-15s, certain kind of bullets and all the rest, because then you end up getting beat up in your campaign. And that's the problem with political novices. They get involved in all these ancillary conversations, and they end up, and that's why we don't have more Tea Parties in the Freedom Caucus. We have Jim Jordan, we have Mark Meadows, we have Mike Lee, we have, we have a few, Ted Cruz and what have you, and they're far right-leaning, right-leaning Republicans, and they're good. But we could have a lot more if the Tea Party would break down, coalesce into one unit, and then get the lobbyists, get the leadership, bring in the people that know politics to help the candidates and train these candidates. We'd be light years down the road from where we are today.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because the Tea Party movement, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, this is really, I never really joined, but I thought this is really what I believe in. It's a small, limited government that's close to home, low taxes, less regulations, and really, I guess that's what the message should have been overall, huh?
Well, it was the message, but the problem was they pounded Now, don't get me wrong. Don't take this wrong, public. Don't send me hate mail. Don't shoot at Bill. Don't do any of that. Look, you can only say the word Constitution so many times, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And when this is all your message is, I'm a Constitution, 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 guns, smaller government.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the message. Well, the voter wants more. They want to know more. Where do you stand on Palestinian Authority? Where do you stand on Russia? Where do you stand on, border security, education, and all this? And yeah, but I love the Constitution. I love the Constitution. It's hard to win campaigns when that is your platform, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because the American people assume, Bill, you're running for the U.S. Senate. You love your country and you love the Constitution. You don't need to make that your entire theme of your campaign, which is what our guys were doing. And that's why we got beat so often. They didn't know how to develop a campaign strategy, if you will, to bring the masses in. It was like you cannot win. Very few districts in this nation can you win being a hard, for lack of better words, hard right candidate. You can in Utah, you can in possibly Wyoming and a few places like that. If you're trying to run for a seat in North Carolina, you better run as a middle of the road guy, because you have to pick up independents, you have to pick up Democrats. The Republicans are outnumbered in voting, registered voters. We're outnumbered, and that's a mathematical fact, okay? Trump was able to win because Trump attracted conservative Democrats, independents. He attracted moderates.
Yeah, and
and
of
that
course
way he was able to win.
He related to the working people, middle class people.
Yeah, and most of those, particularly in your upper Midwest states like Michigan, eastern or western Pennsylvania, Ohio, and places like that, are all union employees that were traditionally Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought them in because he addressed Joe Sixpack's needs and their concerns and things like that. That's right.
Wow, this is really fascinating, because you're giving us a little bit of behind the scenes, or what it really takes in politics. And most of us, we just watch TV and we watch the talking heads, and we listen to what they have to say. And most of the time, they're just repeating talking points over and over again, because it looks to me like, and we talked about this earlier, you have to have the money, and there's just a few elites that actually control what the policies are going to be and who the people are going to be. They're going to be able to run.
Sure. I'll give you a great example. This cycle, you've seen it where you live. You've seen it all over the nation. Television ads talking about Nancy Pelosi. You better vote Republican or you're going to get Nancy Pelosi, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem with this, and I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm afraid it's going to. The Democrats are going to pick up seats tonight. And they're largely going to pick up seats because that message came from Romney's office, okay? The GOP, head of the GOP, and their marketing department decided, we're going to market this year fear of Nancy Pelosi. Well, as a side note to that, I'll just give you one example. If the Democrats win tonight, Nancy Pelosi won't be Speaker. She's not going to be Speaker, and the American people know it because they've already said so. And on top of that, Nancy Pelosi, believe it or not, is one of the few Democrats that have said we can't hold impeachment hearings. The rest of the flock wants to hold impeachment hearings. She's one of the few that have actually stood up and said there's nothing to impeach the man for. He hadn't done anything wrong since he's been president to warrant being impeached. Mm-hmm. We may not like him. We may not like some of his policies, but he is not performed illegally, okay? So with that said, they decide to run with this mantra of Nancy Pelosi is going to be the next speaker, and you don't want Nancy Pelosi in there. Well, everybody else is discussing border security, the economy, national security, rebuilding health care, and they're running all these ads. Not here in the 3rd District, Congressman Young never once denounced the Democrats attacking him over health care. He never once responded to it. He never once has responded to the border security. They're attacking him on everything in the book in the 3rd District, and I'm afraid he's going to lose because of it, because he ran with what you were talking about, the elitist establishment's talking points. His campaign didn't create their own narrative for David Young. They ran with the national platform. And it's going to probably cost him the election.
I know, and a lot of us that watch mainstream TV, like Fox News, I watch some of these talking heads on there, and that's all they're talking about is you don't want Nancy Pelosi to be the head of the Democrat Party. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. In order to impeach the president, he has to be convicted of or charged, and the House has to vote that he's committed high crimes and treason, or high crimes and misdemeanors, I mean, and then it goes to the Senate to vote on that, and it takes 75 senators or 75% of the Senate to convict him of and to impeach him anyway. So we know that's not going to happen. It's impossible.
Right. And the American people know that. They know you're not going to get, it's actually 2/3, I believe. You're not going to get 65 plus senators to say, I suppose it's possible, Bill. I mean, anything's possible in this day and age. I don't, everything's happening. So I don't put anything past anybody anymore. But to have 65 say, and then my fear, I'll be very honest with you, my fear is them holding the hearings. You remember Bill Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
You remember what that did. At that particular time, I owned a small trucking company, and I'd run up and down I-40 and I-75 all over America. And I remember these truck drivers talking. They were livid. They were absolutely livid that these hearings were going on. And that act, because they put it on TV every day. You remember that? It was on NBC all day, every day. We heard the House of Representatives and them charging Bill Clinton with this, that, and the other. And America very nearly blew up over that. Well, Clinton didn't have the millions of passionate followers that Donald Trump has. I mean, these followers of Donald Trump are rabid. And if they do hold impeachment hearings, I'm afraid what may happen in this country, and it's not going to be good. I mean, I can visualize 1 million patriots showing up on the mall with pitchforks and torches, and they're not going to be there for a weenie roast. They're going to be there to tear the house down. And I can see that happening. Impeaching this president would not be a good move for the Democrats.
Hey, I agree. Let's change our subject a little bit, sure. And I want to learn more about the crow's nest and how you got started with that, because I've been reading this and I just really enjoy your writings.
Well, thank you very much. Crow's Nest started quite by accident. I'd been involved in a business deal in Arizona. The economy tanked back in late 08, 09, as you remember, early 09. And then Obama was elected. Well, I was a victim of that. And my family said, why don't you come to Iowa? So I did. And I tried to get a job up here, and nothing seemed to be working out. I would stomp around the house and fuss about the president every day. And my wife and mother and sister eventually held an intervention. They said, Ken, you've got to stop this, man. You're killing us, with fussing about the president every day. They said, why don't you start a blog? And I said, well, okay, I don't know how to do it. So I started this thing. I don't even remember how I did it now. And then my good friend Tim Saletti, who I talked about earlier, who's the guy is actually an incredible web designer and network guy, built me a website and said, here you go, cowboy, start writing. And I did. And I would just write my thoughts, sometimes 2 or 3 articles a day. Now I've got like 1,300 articles on this site. It's crowsnestpolitics.org. And I ended up, the height of my career on Crow's Nest happened during the election, just before the election. I actually got invited by the RNC to attend the convention in Cleveland as a member of the media. And I said, oh my God. So I went. And I started talking to people up there. And one afternoon, I was walking across the street between the, I don't know if you went or not to the convention.
No, I wasn't.
the convention was held at the house of LeBron, the one he built, right? The big Coliseum he built. And right across from there is this grassy area, and then the Cleveland Indians play baseball. So it's like this big sports complex there together. Well, standing in the middle of the street was Corey Lewandowski. And I was walking back I'd been in the middle, got me a burger and drank Coke and everything. And I was going back for the evening part of the convention. And I was walking back across the street, and Corey was standing in the middle of the street. And I walked up to him and said, "Hi, Mr. Lewandowski. I would just like you to see if I'm as big of a son of a gun as you were told I was." And he looks up and he says, "Ken Crow, I never thought you were a son of a gun." And I said, "You know my name?" He said, "Yeah, everybody in the campaign knows you." And I said, "You're kidding." He goes, "No, we'd be flying along at 35,000 feet. And the president," or back then he called him the boss, said the boss would hold up his phone on the plane and say, "I want everybody to read Ken's article today." I said, "You mean the president reads me?" He goes, "Yeah, he read you, Michelle Malkin, I think Eric Erickson. Every day would read you faithfully." And that's how we developed the grassroots portion of the campaign, to appeal to the grassroots. And that's why we're going to win. And lo and behold, the night of the election at 2:30 in the morning, I got a couple of phone calls. And one of them was from a White House reporter, who's now a White House reporter for the Washington Times, called me up and said, "Thank you." And I said, "For what?" And he said, "Getting the president elected." And I sat in my living room, Bill, and cried. I really did. I cried like a baby. That meant so much to me. And I had no idea the whole time. I knew I was sending messages, and you read, and you know what I'd say. I'd fuss at him about this, or say, "You need to do this," or "Stop doing this," or whatever, trying to get him to appeal to the Tea Party. And apparently it worked. And I had no idea.
Well, Ken, I want to thank you myself personally for having a hand in electing President Trump, because we certainly needed him in the White House, and we need all the things he's doing, and he's accomplished so much. So I have to say thank you, because you're one of the people who helped make that happen.
Well, I'm so flattered, and I am so humbled, and I really don't think I had that much to do with it. But if I had a little bit to do with it, I'm just thrilled. It's just, yeah, he's made a few mistakes, and he said a few things he shouldn't have said. But by gosh, he's getting stuff done, Bill.
Yep.
He's getting things accomplished, and he's getting things accomplished that we needed to a long time ago. And they're now being addressed, and he's getting it done.
Yeah. I know sometimes he says things or tweets things, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, don't do that. And but the one that really got me was in that third debate, when they asked him, will you support or accept the results of the election? And the whole idea of the question was, it was a gotcha question for him to say, yes, I'll accept that Hillary Clinton's going to be president. And I thought, gosh darn, Mr. Trump, Donald, tell him, of course I'm going to accept the results of the election, because I'm going to become the president. And I'm going to accept that, and just leave it go at that, and the Democrats and the media just tried to make such a big thing over that. And I kind of have a feeling that kind of has helped lead to this whole Russian collusion scam and all the rest of the stuff that's been going on.
Well, it's all made up. That's the thing. It's all made up. But back to the other for just a second, I'll tell you one funny tidbit about that. I got this phone call one night. They had held the first debate when we still had the 16 candidates. We were still primary. They held the first debate. Well, just before the second debate, I get this phone call, said, you need to come out to Jethro's Barbecue. So if you're ever in Des Moines, Jethro's Barbecue has great barbecue. And we're holding a debate watch party. The Trump campaign team in Iowa and all the fans and everybody. We're holding a debate watch party at Jethro's Barbecue. Well, I walk in, and the first person to greet me was Tana Gertz. Now, I don't know you're going to remember Tana, but Tana was one of his original apprentices when he had the show The Apprentice, not the celebrity, but the actual apprentices, and he would give them a job for a year and all that. That was their reward. And she came in second place that year. Well, she's good friends with him. So she was his Iowa co-chair of the Iowa campaign for the caucuses. And I walk in, and she comes running up to me, and she says, "Oh, Ken, Mr. T is angry with you." And I said, what's he angry with me for? "Well, he read that article where you blasted him for calling Rosie a pig." And I said, "Well, listen," and I did. I mean, I fussed at him for calling Megyn Kelly out, saying she bleeds from her orifices and all that stuff. And I called him out. I said, "No, you're asking to be president of the United States. You cannot pick on private citizens. You can pick on senators, you can pick on the media, you can pick on, but you don't call out private citizens and attack them on worldwide television." And I wrote this scathing thing, and he apparently didn't like it much. But you notice he quit. He didn't pick on anybody else after that. Specifically a person, he didn't pick on anybody after that, particularly women.
Yeah, that's a sure recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that feud was 3 years old. He didn't need to bring that up. You remember, he just brought it up out of clear nowhere. She asked him some question about, you've been called a misogynist. Are you a misogynist or something like that? "Well, only against Rosie because she's a pig." I mean, where did that come from?
Hey, Ken, speaking of writing and blogging and everything, you've written a book, haven't you?
Well, yes, sir. I wrote one a couple of years ago named Ego in a Teabag, but I'm writing a new one now called The Accidental Congressman. And this one is going to be pretty interesting. I just spent the weekend with a congressman from Michigan by the name of Kerry Bentivolio. And he served from 2013 to 2015 in the House of Representatives. And because of corruption, which is all going to be in the book, and I got to tell you, Bill, it's frightening. It's frightening what he told me. It's sad and it's frightening. And you and I talked a little bit about it before we went on the air, about what's really going on and how we actually don't have that much say in who we elect anymore. It's all done by, and you mentioned it earlier, the folks in the ivory tower in Washington, D.C. kind of decide who our candidates are. We, the people, we go vote for these candidates, but they decide who they're going to be rather than us decide who they're going to be. So that's why it's so hard for a grassroots person to get traction and win unless you're like President Trump and have so much money that they can't, and fame and fortune that they cannot shut you up. But if you're average grassroots fella, unless you've got a lot of money in the bank and you're willing to put it up, you're not gonna even get in the primaries. And that's what's going to be in this book. I'll give you an example. One part of this, what really happened. Thaddeus McCotter had been, former Congressman Thaddeus McCotter had been the congressman in the 11th District of Michigan. Somehow, some way, the ultimate faux pas happened, and Thaddeus's crew and staff neglected to get him on the ballot, get him enough signatures to be on the ballot. So Thaddeus is out campaigning, and then he gets a call one day from the state auditor, says, sorry, sir, but you're not going to be on the ballot. You didn't turn in enough signatures. Now, how that happens for a sitting congressman, I'll never know, but it did. Well, the guy that did have enough signatures, the primary Thaddeus, was Kerry Benevolio. He needed 1,000 signatures. He had 1,500 that he turned in, and they were all good. So he was on the ballot. Now, this was a Republican district. It's like Republican R plus 10 or something, right? You'd have to be, a total degenerate Republican not to win this seat. Well, he didn't have a lot of money, raised a little bit of money, but he won. So he was the accidental congressman. McCotter should have won re-election in that district. Well, because of that, it so infuriated the Republican establishment of Michigan, Ronna McDaniel, or Romney being one. Remember, she was the head of the Republican Party of Michigan. It so infuriated these guys that they went out in search of someone to replace Kerry in the next election. And they found this guy by the name of Dave Trott, who was an investment banker who's now the sitting congressman. And he gave the party $15 million in Michigan. And then he put up $5 million of his own. He hired a guy to go around K Street in Washington, D.C. and visit all of the PACs, all of the lobbyists in Washington, and told them, don't support Benevolio because Trott's putting up $5 million and he's going to be the next congressman. So he through corruption, cut off Kerry's entire ability to run a re-election campaign and be successful because he couldn't raise the amount of money needed. And he bought the seat. Well, now he's decided, I'm tired of this. It's no fun. He served 2 terms. And a lady by the name of Lena Epstein stepped in. Her father owns the big oil and gasoline distributorships around Detroit and all over most of Michigan. They sell all the gasoline and oil. And she's put up millions of dollars. And now she's the nominee this time. So where are the people's voices? They didn't want Lena Epstein. They didn't want Dave Trott. Where are the voices? I mean, how do you stop this corruption with money? What do you do?
Well, what you're telling me is, and we see this in the Democrat Party, for example, we see Hillary Clinton and everybody on the Democrat side, they're with her and everything. And I saw her as being one of the most unqualified candidates that ever ran, but apparently they were great fundraisers. So if you can make a good speech and you can raise a lot of money, I guess you're the darling of the elites.
Well, apparently so. But you talk, and I'll tell you one other interesting thing he told me over the weekend that really troubled me. I'm not trying to change the subject, but I just happen to remember this. I asked him, I said, Congressman, out of all the people on Capitol Hill, how many would you say actually read the bills? How many actually read the bills that they vote on? He said there's probably 20 congressmen on Capitol Hill that read the bills. The rest of them don't. The way they vote is the way their leadership tells them to vote. So they're not voting for us. They're voting for how Paul Ryan or Nancy Pelosi or Kevin McCarthy or whoever tells them to vote. They're not voting the will of the constituents. They don't even know what the bills say because they don't read them.
And so we got an anxious puppy here too, which is
yes, they're. Tell you what, I probably ought to let them out for a minute if you'd let me. Let me put them
I'm
outside.
gonna.
Sure.
Okay, we're back after a short puppy break. This is a new one for the American Vision. And Ken, we talked on the phone last week, and we were talking about a lot of different subjects. And one thing we talked about was this anonymous letter that came out like a month or two ago. And who really wrote that? And do you know anything about that and how something like that could actually take traction?
Well, yes, sir, I do. And it was quite by accident the reason I do know about it. As you know, I'm involved, I'm a political consultant and things like that. Well, my partner received a phone call one day, and it was kind of ironic. It came through. He wasn't even going to take the call at first, and then curiosity got the best of him, and he took the call because it was run through a encrypted phone number from Switzerland, of all places. And he took the call, and the guy on the other end of the phone says, would you be interested in running a presidential campaign? And he said, wow. Well, maybe. It depends on who it is, right? And they talked for a few minutes, and he said, okay, I'm going to send you over a non-disclosure agreement, and then I can tell you who's involved in the campaign. He said, okay. Well, he calls me up on the phone and says, what do you think about this? And I said, well, let's see who it is. We're obviously not going to represent a Democrat, and we're not really representing anybody if the president's going to run, right? Okay, because we're not going to go against the president. I had endorsed him 4 months before he ever came down the escalator. And my partner did as well. So we decided we'd just listen and see what was going on. So signed this agreement, and then he calls back and he says, okay, who all's involved in this? Well, it turns out the vice president's involved in it because one of his staffers or one of his people, I don't know what position he holds within his staff, but one of his people was the person that called us. So we're thinking it's Mike Pence, right? And then he says the vice president's on board, half of the cabinet's already on board. We formed an exploratory committee, and in the first week raised $350,000. And we're thinking, wait a minute, this is a coup. Bill, this is a bloodless coup. These guys are going in behind the president and totally sabotaging him. And you remember what it said in this letter, that they had taken things off of his desk and they had given orders for other things to be done that he had wanted, and all of this supposedly under the auspices of saving the nation from this maniac, right? This is a coup. I mean, there's no other word for it. Finally, he said, well, it's Mad Dog Mattis, Secretary of Defense. General Mattis is the one that's running for president. And we said, you're kidding. This guy, who is a lifetime Marine, 4-star general, is going against his commander-in-chief and is going to run against him? We were stunned. And then less than a week later, this letter comes out in the New York Times. And Bill, it was verbatim what we were told on the telephone. It was almost like they read this letter to us on the telephone. That's why we knew who it was. I mean, there was no, even used the same verbiage, the same accentuations on certain phrases and what have you. Everything was exactly identical to that New York Times article. So apparently, I don't know if they've shut this down now. I don't know. We haven't talked to them in weeks, but we declined. We said there's no way we're going to do this against the president.
That is stunning for me. Being a Marine officer, it's hard to believe.
Well, it happened, and we know it's him, and we know what he was planning, and we know because we had signed confidentiality agreements. Alex did, I didn't, so I can talk about it. But yeah, that happened.
But we haven't really heard anything recently. But then that's what happens behind the scenes. We don't hear anything, do we? Until it explodes on us.
Well, no, you don't. And as a side note to that, I called up Katrina Pearson, who you may remember being one of his spokespeople during the campaign. Well, I've known Katrina for a number of years. And I called her up and I said, is the president aware of this? And when I called her, it was probably a week to 2 weeks after we received the phone call, declined the offer, and the article actually came out. It was probably a few days after that I gave her a call, and she said, yes, he's aware, and he knows who's behind it now. And if you notice in the last few days in the news, you've seen how there's going to be all these shakeups after the midterm elections. Well, that's what he's getting ready to do, clean house, I think.
I'm glad to hear that. That's a good thing, because he's got to have a team that's supporting him, because that's what supports us, we the people.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm shocked that one, but it's not that surprising. When you have somebody with the character of Trump, meaning bigger than life, people in America have this vision, if you will. We've been groomed to where our presidents are soft-spoken, very presidential, acting and looking and talking. Well, had we had a president that was a general like that in World War II, we wouldn't have beaten Germany. It took a Patton, somebody bigger than life, to heck with the rules, I'm going to win type attitude. And that's what America was looking for this time. I was asked so many times during the campaign, Bill, why do you think Trump can win? And my stock answer was, because America wants John Wayne. And they do. And we've got him. And John Wayne is rattling the leaves, shaking everything up, cleaning everything out. And the dragon doesn't want to die. But the dragon is dying. And I think President Trump will end up killing the dragon in the end.
Yeah, he'll slay the dragon.
Yep.
Hey, you know what we've done? We started out with John Wayne, and we've come full cycle back to John Wayne again.
We did. I didn't mean to. I didn't plan it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Hey, we're probably going to have to wrap this up. So let me ask you to tell us a little bit about where people can find you, find your Crow's Nest, and your book. Where can we get that to read it?
Well, you can get the book by going on Barnes & Noble's website and type it in, or Amazon and type it in Ego in a Teabag. Okay. I'm on Facebook under Ken Crow. You can friend me. Crow's Nest Politics on Facebook. Twitter, I'm at KWR Crow. Stands for Kenneth William Robert Crow, KWR Crow on Twitter. And I guess that's in crowsnestpolitics.org.
Okay.
Stop by.
Okay, that's great. Ken, thank you so much for being a guest, and thank you for departing your wisdom. And this has been so enlightening and really fascinating hearing from you. So thank you so much.
Well, Bill, it's been an honor, sir. It's an honor to meet you, and thank you for your service. Marines are great Americans, and I love them to death, and thank you.
Okay, we got something in common there.
For the movement, too, my friend. You're a great American.
Thank you so much. You're welcome. Okay, boys and girls, you heard it first on the American Vision, and this is really blockbuster news. So we're not we're not like the mainstream media, so we don't have breaking news or news alerts or whatever. But this is something that was a first. And speaking of first, my first book is 2020, A Clear Vision for America. So I want you to get the book as well. And thank you all for watching our show. And thanks to Ken Crow for coming on. He was just an awesome guest and giving us, his insight and perspective on politics and more kind of behind the scenes of politics that are affecting we the people. So God bless you all. God bless our active duty personnel, our vets, and God save our America, because we need you now more than ever before.